Welcome to Looping Pixels. Today we are going to explore whispers from the other side, the truth about mediums and spirit communication. When we lose someone we love, how far are we willing to go to know that they're really okay?
Or even just to hear their voice one last time.
Exactly. And that's the question, that really profound human question that sits at the heart of all this. Today we're looking at the information you brought us, the huge emotional relief people find in this, and then putting it up against the clinical scrutiny of science.
And that's the tension we have to navigate. We're exploring what our sources say about spirit communication, everything from these really tightly controlled lab studies to the specific psychological tricks some fraudulent psychics use.
So it's acknowledging the need, but also the science.
Right. The deep emotional need and the hard data.
So let's start there with that emotional hook. Grief is just, it's so corrosive. And what people are looking for, I think researchers call it a continuing bond, right?
Yes, it's a necessary part of resolving grief. And to get there, they often seek out what's called an assisted after-death communication, or an ADC.
Okay, so a client, or a sitter, as the research calls them, goes in for a reading. What are they actually getting?
Well, the information tends to fall into three sort of therapeutic buckets. First, there's basic validation.
Just proving it's really them.
Exactly. Information about the deceased personality, their physical traits, things to prove their identity. Second, and this is key, is information to build that continuing bond.
The "I'm still watching over you" kind of message.
Precisely. The medium might say something like, "He likes the color you painted the kitchen," or "She saw that photo album you put together."
Wow.
It assures the sitter that the deceased is still part of their life. And the third category is all about direct messages to alleviate guilt or sorrow.
There was nothing you could have done.
Things like that, or "I didn't feel any pain." It's all structured to mirror the kind of spontaneous communication people sometimes report having naturally. It speaks to a fundamental need.
But wait a minute. If we look at that first point, information about personality or physical traits, isn't that exactly what a good cold reader would be looking for?
That is the million-dollar question, and it's what drives all the scientific testing. It's the challenge of validation.
Right.
But before we get to the skepticism, we have to acknowledge how powerful this is. I was really struck by the story of a woman named Mabel. She developed her abilities only after her father, after he died by suicide.
And that story just perfectly illustrates that idea of a continuing bond being broken. Her mother kept the cause of death secret for years, so Mabel's whole relationship with her father was just frozen in confusion.
Until she went to a psychic reading.
And got a message from him, telling her he loved her. And for her, that reestablished the bond.
And that sense of resolution is, it's priceless, but it's also measurable. A pilot study found a really significant drop in grief levels after a reading.
How significant?
The mean score went from 3.13 down to 1.96 on a 4-point scale.
Whoa. That's a huge drop. That warrants serious attention. It suggests that, whatever the mechanism is, the experience itself is a kind of self-prescribed treatment for grief.
It absolutely is, but that just shifts the question for scientists, doesn't it? If the relief is real, is the source supernatural, or is it a highly effective psychological technique that gets the same result?
And that's where we get into the world of performance. We have to talk about cold reading.
We do.
The classic method, where a phony psychic pumps the client for information without them ever realizing they're the one giving all the answers. It's really an art form.
It is, and the tools are designed to build trust instantly. First up, just observational skills.
What do you mean?
A skilled reader can guess your income level from your shoes, your watch. They can spot hobbies or even a military background from a specific tattoo. They have a head start before they even say a word.
And then when they do start talking, they lean on things like, Barnum Statements, the Forer effect.
Barnum Statements, right. These are those vague, general personality traits that apply to almost everyone, but we all want to believe they're specifically about us.
Like, you're a generous person, but you're not easily fooled.
Exactly. Who's going to argue with that? We all want to think we're smart and kind.
And then there's that other one, the Rainbow Ruse. That one's brilliant.
It's psychological genius. You make two contradictory statements that cover all the bases. For instance, you're generally a very calm and patient person.
But sometimes you have to really hold your anger back.
Yes. It validates both your ideal self, the calm person, and the messy reality of being human. It feels so personal.
So it feels like they see right through you.
And that leads right into confirmation bias. After the reading, the client forgets all the mistakes, the misses, And they only remember the one or two things that were spot on, the hits.
And over time, the story in their head gets more and more miraculous.
The memory evolves, and that kind of detailed knowledge is what you can expect from looping pixels. It's why skeptics like Harry Houdini said any experiment had to be incredibly strict to rule out fraud.
Which is what academics tried to do.
Right, that was the goal. Researchers like Beischel and Schwartz at the University of Arizona, they created a triple-blind protocol study in 2007 to try and eliminate all those flaws.
But even those studies got scrutinized. I remember the British Psychological Society experiment found that when readings were judged accurate, the statements were usually super general.
But the specific statements were almost always wrong.
Generalization is the cold reader's best friend.
Exactly. And some critics pointed out that to make the tests easier, the design was almost, well, too simple.
How so?
To make a hit more likely, mediums were sometimes given a choice between two very different deceased people, like a blonde, outgoing father who died suddenly versus a dark-haired, quiet son who was a murder victim.
Wait, so it wasn't a test of contacting a spirit, it was more like a multiple-choice quiz.
Pretty much. They just had to match the right description to the right sitter. It was designed to maximize success.
And the irony.
The irony is that critics pointed out that even with these simplified, high-contrast options, the mediums were still wrong about a third of the time.
Okay, let's shift gears from the human side to the tech side. Let's talk about electronic voice phenomena, or EVP.
The voices on audio recordings.
Right. This goes way back. I think the first reports were from a photographer in 1956, Attila von Zale. He recorded things like, "This is G," and my favorite, hot dog art.
I love that one. The scientific explanation here is something called auditory pareidolia.
So basically, your brain is just trying to find patterns in random noise.
It's hardwired to do it. The brain hears static or white noise, and it incorrectly interprets it as a familiar pattern, like a human voice.
And there are physical explanations too, right? Not just psychological.
Oh, absolutely. Often it's just basic radio interference, especially with old RLC circuitry. Think of a simple transistor radio picking up a taxi dispatcher. You also get cross-modulation from other electronics, or you just raise the electrical noise floor and filter the white noise until it sounds like speech.
The power of expectation is huge here.
It's everything. Paranormal researcher Kenny Biddle showed this perfectly. He investigated an EVP from a haunted museum that supposedly said the name Annie.
Right.
Well, Biddle noticed the name Annie was already written on the back of a portrait in that room. The investigators were primed to hear it. He then showed that if you just scan an AM/FM radio, you'll hear words like company or anything, or even the phrase, and he.
Which all sound like Annie, if you're expecting to hear it.
Exactly. Expectation creates the phenomenon.
So after all this, what does it mean for someone listening? We have this very real human need, this measurable grief reduction, but it's set against these really persuasive explanations, like cold reading and auditory pareidolia.
The conflict is unavoidable. And it's interesting, the mediums themselves often make a clear distinction between what they call a positive, controlled psychic ability and what they see as mental illness.
How do they define the difference?
To them, psychic ability makes sense. It gives them purpose. Mental illness is confusing, chaotic, voices telling them to do things. For many of them, integrating these experiences helps them cope with their own histories. But we have to remember, they are dealing with clients in intense distress.
A level of distress they're probably not trained to handle.
That's the concern.
It really is a service that operates right on the edge of psychology and human tragedy. Which brings us to our final provocative thought for you to consider. If science eventually proves that the emotional healing from a reading is absolutely genuine and therapeutic, but the communication is confirmed to be coming from the sitter's own telepathic memory, not a spirit, does the truth of the afterlife still matter to the person who is grieving?
That's a fascinating question. Is the therapeutic effect more important than the objective truth? That's a line for psychology and philosophy to walk.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of such a difficult topic. If you enjoy taking this journey with us, please make sure you subscribe to Looping Pixels for more investigations into complex subjects.
And if you like the skeptical angle, next time we could look at the world of government parapsychology. I'm talking about the CIA's Stargate project. It was shut down because the information they got was just too vague to be useful for intelligence.
We'll see you then.